Hey, good morning, guys. What's happening? What's going on? You guys have tuned into Rules for Rebels. Today is Monday, March 13th, 2023, and it is going to be a crazy day today. I think we're going to title today's video, "It's a Beautiful Day to Watch It All Burn." It looks like the economy is in full meltdown. Joe Biden's going to be speaking at 8 a.m. I believe that's New York time this morning, 8765. Either 8 or 9 a.m. New York time. I think it's going to be 5 a.m. California time. Normally when the White House does press conferences, it's at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They're normally 30 minutes or an hour late getting them started. Joe Biden wants to get out and speak before banks open up this morning to try to prevent a run on the banks. Today's video is going to be kind of a schizo video. We're going to be kind of all over the place. This whole story is moving so quickly. It's hard to keep up with. I don't know if any of you guys watch Meet Kevin, but Meet Kevin's putting out like 6 videos per day, just continually updating people with live streams about what's going on. Janet Yellen has said we are not going to bail out the banks. At the same time, she was basically describing what is essentially a bailout to the banks. The government is buying toxic assets from banks. The government is agreeing to basically insure all bank accounts up to any limit, regardless of the $250,000 FDIC limit. Over the weekend, I think a lot of people were almost kind of cheering this on, right? Silicon Valley Bank, I think something potentially under 2%, but definitely under 7% of their accounts were under the FDIC limit. So what does that mean? It was mostly tech companies and very wealthy people banking with the bank. It was reported that Oprah had to be physically restrained when she learned that she was going to lose over $500 million. 500 Israeli startups were going to fail. This was being described as an extinction level event for startups and tech. And the government is trying to reassure everybody that everything's okay, nothing to worry about, don't look over here. Over the weekend, Congress was actually talking about how they could censor people on social media who call for a bank run, or who even put out potentially negative news about certain banks. People are looking to flee small community banks and credit unions for the big banks, the Bank of Americas, the JP Morgan Chases, etc. It's going to be a very, very interesting day to watch today. And if we know anything, it's that when everybody tells you everything is all right, everything is certainly not all right. Remember, the CEO was telling everybody, oh, everything's fine. The CEO of SVB Bank, oh, everything's fine, guys, don't worry. We're trying to raise money. This is a great place to invest. At the same time, he's selling millions of dollars in stock. The CFO selling a bunch of stock. The CMO selling a bunch of stock. Jim Cramer, within the past month, was telling people that SVB will be one of the big winners of the year and invest in them. Basically wanting, retail investors, people who watch television, people who watch the Jim Cramer show to rush out and pile into the stock so that his buddies could get out. Kind of reminiscent of the 2008 crash. When a day before the crash, Jim Cramer was telling people to buy, Bear Stearns or Lehman Brothers. Today is going to be a very, very wild day. Before we kind of get into all the news, and again, feel free to drop comments below, because I'm probably actually kind of behind on the news. I kind of tuned out yesterday afternoon and haven't really fully been keeping up with these things. I do have a show recommendation for you, something to distract you from the economy collapsing around you. Found a great show on Netflix. It's called Into the Night. It's actually a French show, and essentially what the show is, there's a guy who works for the UN, I believe it's an Italian soldier who works with the UN, and he has learned that as soon as the sun rises, everybody's going to die. We don't really know exactly what's going on, but the sun is essentially microwaving people. So he hijacks a plane, and there's maybe a dozen or so people on this plane, because the plane hadn't even boarded yet. He makes the plane take off, and the plane has to stay ahead of the sun. So as soon as the sun catches up to the plane, they're all going to die. So you can imagine normally it takes a full airport and crews to run an airplane, and these people are having to fly to stay ahead of the sun, land at some airport if they can land, if everything hasn't been destroyed there, try to fill up on fuel and continue to run. And they're kind of trying to find some type of bunker or see if anybody else is alive. Otherwise, they're perpetually going to be on this journey trying to stay ahead of the sun. And you can imagine all the issues and headaches and problems that come up with that, right? With 12 people trying to keep an airliner in the air 24/7 pretty much. Really interesting show. I think I'm about 5 or 6 episodes into it. Just discovered it over the weekend. It is in French, so you will have to read subtitles. But really, really interesting. Obviously, with Netflix, you can dub stuff into English as well. But check it out if you're looking for a good show to watch. I think you'll like that. Also, let's give a shout out to the sponsor of today's video, QuickFixSynthetic.com. Check out QuickFixSynthetic.com. Link in the description box below. If you find yourself needing to pass a drug test, their Quick Fix Synthetic Urine Kit comes with synthetic urine in a bottle that you microwave for 10 seconds. It's also got a heat pack to keep it warm while you head to the drug testing clinic, doctor's office, wherever. They also have urine spiking kits, cleansing detox drinks, mouthwashes if you need to pass a mouth swab test like they give at Amazon. And they also have a shampoo to help you pass hair follicle tests. They offer fast shipping and offer a 100% customer satisfaction guarantee. So check them out. Link in the description box below. Let's get into the notes. Again, I think I already mentioned this, but it's going to be kind of a schizo video today. We're a little bit all over the place. The SVB collapse, as well as other bank collapses, is being described as an extinction level event for startups and tech companies. And again, over the weekend, I saw a lot of people like, oh, get your money out of the bank. A lot of people were talking about, I'm going to start shuffling my money from one bank to the next. I'm not even going to necessarily pull it out, but I want to create a bunch of headaches for the banks. A lot of people were kind of excited that a lot of the really cocky tech bros and wealthy people in America were going to get hosed. Again, it was reported that Oprah had to be physically restrained when she learned that she was going to lose $500 million. I forget all the other celebrities, but a number of other prominent celebrities had a lot of money in these banks. A bunch of Israeli startups had money in these banks. If you think that the government is going to let Oprah and celebrities and wealthy people, and especially anybody connected to Israel, get screwed on their money, not going to happen. And that's why we're seeing the bailouts happen right now. It's also come out, and this is probably later in the notes, but it's come out that the woman who was head of risk at this bank, she seemed to be always on a tirade. Everything she talked about was being a immigrant, LGBTQ person of color. She seemed more focused on wokeness than actually analyzing risk for this bank. And then we wind up seeing this bank fall. Hopefully this will be a sign that maybe companies should focus on what the core company is about and not about LGBTQ, trans, BIPOC, whatever other nonsense they want to focus on. What's kind of bad here, obviously we don't want the entire banking system to collapse, but what's kind of bad here is banks who made risky investments and risky decisions are going to wind up being bailed out by taxpayers. It's almost comical that they're saying taxpayers aren't going to foot the bill. Where does the government get their money from? The government doesn't produce anything. The government doesn't make any money. The government takes money from us. So that the idea that the government has endless amount of money to back up banks and it's not going to come out of the taxpayers' money is just silly. Let's see, the Dow, let's talk about how markets closed Friday. The Dow closed down 345 points. NASDAQ closed down 3.17%. S&P 500 closed down 1.45%. Crypto was down big over the weekend. Numerous stablecoins had lost their peg with the dollar. I believe Circle and a lot of these stablecoin projects had actually banked with SBV. However, following the bailout announcement, crypto surged on a 24-hour. Bitcoin is up 7.53%, Ethereum up 7.57%, BNB up 7.11%. And though many stable coins are still trading under $1, I kind of mentioned this in the lead up to the video, but Biden is addressing the nation at 8 a.m., so that's 8765, 5 o'clock a.m. California time. Most press conferences, again, happen at 1 in the afternoon, 3 in the afternoon. So it's kind of crazy. You can tell that Biden wants to reassure people. The banking system is solvent. And remember, for months and even years now, the American consumer is strong despite the fact that credit card debt is at all-time highs. Credit card interest is at all-time highs. Most people don't have any money saved. Savings rates are at all-time lows, but the American consumer is strong. The American economy is strong. Banks are strong. At the same time that banks are failing, people are broke and the economy is crumbling. Again, Yellen said that we weren't going to be bailing out banks at the same time that she's basically announcing a bailout for banks. HSBC is buying the UK wing of SVB. Something to kind of rub some salt in an open wound here. SVB employees were receiving bonuses hours before this meltdown. They're basically being rewarded for causing this meltdown. It's being reported that other banks are going to have to kick up more for FDIC insurance to support these failed banks who mismanage funds. This whole thing is insane. SVB collapsed, taken over by the FDIC, bringing down banks, tech companies, and more. Over 20 major banks affected, over 20 major tech companies affected. And these are only the ones that are being reported on. On Friday, Etsy sent out an email to Etsy sellers letting them know that they couldn't pay them out because they banked through SVB Bank. Roku apparently had over $400 million in SVB Bank, 25% of their money. Roblox, Etsy, we're also hearing Shopify and Stripe were customers of SVB. I guess we'll see today or in the coming days whether Shopify has trouble paying out customers. Stablecoin projects had money with them, and stablecoins have lost their peg. I believe some stablecoins, at least on some exchanges, had briefly fallen as low as 68 or 69 cents. I know USDC had lost its peg by at least 8 cents. When I looked this morning, most stablecoins had still lost their peg by 2 or 3 cents. Crypto projects affected, social media companies affected, tech companies affected. To get credit, okay, so here's something that's just interesting. To get credit with SBV, which SBV was one of the only places you could get easy credit for tech companies and startups recently, you had to do all your banking with them. You weren't allowed to have other banking relationships. So even when a lot of these tech companies realized that they should probably pull their money out of SVB Bank, doing so would have violated their loan terms. Again, right now, some people are cheerleading this. A lot of people were kind of excited to see cocky tech bros and tech workers and startups who produce nothing, make nothing, bring no value to the world. A lot of people were excited to see them crash, but it looks like they are going to get bailed out. Janet Yellen says they'll help depositors, but there won't be a bailout. Not sure how that isn't a bailout. This has sparked a bank run. On Friday, cops were being called, and Friday and over the weekend, cops were being called due to angry customers showing up at banks, trying to pull out funds outside of SVB banks across the country. There were lines, hordes of people waiting to try to get their money out. And I don't know if you guys remember this or not. Probably within the last month, maybe 6 weeks, I had made a video talking about, there's a YouTuber by the name of, I think his channel is just called Kevin. And he talks a lot about like prepping and claps and everything else. He had talked about how in California they're opening up these like virtual banks with no employees. So if you need to meet with a banker, you'll swipe your ATM card, you'll go into the bank, there'll be a conference room, and you'll get on like a Zoom call with a banker. And at the time he had said, and I had kind of said, it seems like, if there were to be runs on banks, if there were to be problems at banks, there's nobody to actually run up to and scream at or physically assault. And maybe that's all part of the plan, right? If you get on a conference call with somebody and if you start yelling at them, they can hang up on you. There's no accountability. I talked about how, with stock brokerage accounts and things like that, I've always liked banking or setting up relationships with somebody who has a physical brick and mortar location so that I can actually go up and wrap my hands around somebody's neck if the company starts screwing me. Let's see. Senior risk managers were more. Okay, so we talked about this, but the senior risk manager at SVB Bank was more concerned with LGBTQ trans diversity than keeping funds safe. 75% of Americans. Okay, so this is a totally different article. We're getting off of the SVB thing. 75% of Americans who moved last year have regrets. Here's the number one reason why. A recent survey by HomeBay found regrets include unexpected costs, the hassle of moving, missing items lost in a move, right? You're going to regret moving because you lost something in your move, or not liking a new home, according to 1,000 survey respondents who relocated in 2022. I've talked about this. I've been seeing a flurry of posts on real estate subreddits like r/first-time homebuyer, r/real estate, of people who during the Mexican beer cough wound up moving only to realize that they liked their previous location better, or in many cases that they even hate the new place that they moved to. We'll see if I got time to get into it, but I actually saw a Reddit post over the weekend. Somebody had moved from Seattle to North Dakota. Not sure, the type of person who enjoys or wants to live in Seattle is not going to enjoy North Dakota, so not really sure why they moved there, but they talked about how they moved. They bought at the peak. Not that, obviously property in North Dakota is much cheaper than Seattle, but nonetheless, they bought during the peak. They have a higher interest rate, and now they feel stuck in North Dakota. They're unhappy, and they're trying to decide whether it's worth to take the huge loss to wind up moving back to Seattle. And we're seeing a lot of people who move to new areas, small towns, rural areas. A lot of people poured into Florida, and a lot of people are realizing that they don't necessarily like the place that they moved. They realize, now that the beer cough's over and all the restrictions and mandates and lockdowns and everything else, now that that's all over, a lot of people are ready to return to their homes. But a lot of people bought homes sight unseen in locations that they've never been to before, and then realized, maybe I don't like this location that much. A lot of people pouring into Florida. Florida is still very popular, but there are a lot of people who say, I like having the seasons. I hate the humidity down here. I hate all the Republicans. I hate all the Trumpers. I want to go back to my blue state. And I think we will, I guess it'll be interesting. I was going to say I think we will see a lot of people returning to their home areas, but again, with interest rates continuing to rise and with there still being almost no home inventory in most areas because most people aren't selling, that's not necessarily possible either. The number one regret was the number one regret was a tie between not moving to a bigger place and missing the previous home, which was selected by 20% of those surveyed. Now, here's something about not buying a bigger place, right? Somebody who's in the market to buy right now, because interest rates are so high and because home prices are so high, they're only able to buy a fraction of the home that they would have been able to buy a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. So if you buy right now, you're basically going to be compromising and buying something smaller or less nice or in not as nice of an area of town as before. Now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, if interest rates drop, okay, maybe you can get out of that home and move to a bigger home or move to a nicer part of town or get that home with a bigger backyard. But typically you wind up losing money if you don't own a home for at least 5 years, and it's a giant headache moving. So you have people who are in a situation now where if they move now, if they buy a home now, if they switch homes now, they're going to get less home and they're going to have to compromise. But at the same time, they want to be in a home. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out as well. Elon Musk came out and said that he's open to buying SVB Bank, though it's doubtful he would have the funds to after buying Twitter. So right now we're trying to start here's kind of put your tinfoil hat on, but it appears we're trying to start a fake war with China because the economy is collapsing. And if you think about it, over 90% of our pharmaceuticals are made from China. Probably over 90% of everything that we buy is made from China. I think the U.S. probably kind of wants to cut some connections with China, but you're not going to get people to give up, the cheap items that they're used to buying. So maybe starting a war with China is a way to force Americans to be less reliant on Chinese goods. Just kind of a thought there. This collapse, this recession that's happening right now should have happened. This is kind of another tinfoil hat thing. This should have happened back in 2019 prior to the Mexican beer cough. Whether the Mexican beer cough was done by design or just convenient to push back this collapse and to have something to blame it on remains to be seen. This was caused by the government, but first they blamed COVID, and now they have SBV Bank to blame. Again, the CEO of Silicon Valley Bank, SVB Bank, sold over $350 million in stock leading up to this. At the same time, he was trying to convince other people to invest in the company. And again, Jim Cramer was telling everybody to buy SVB stock within the last month, trying to give his buddies time to get out. He obviously has a history of manipulating markets. There's actually an old YouTube video floating around about him, how he would issue fake press releases and how he would manipulate the market and trick retail investors. Not sure why anybody watches him or listens to him anymore, except to maybe do the opposite of what he says. The head of financial risk management at SVB Bank on a page on a website was talking about how she was proud she was a queer person of color and a first-generation immigrant. She was more concerned with diversity and being LGBTQ and an immigrant and everything else than she was about managing risk for the bank. And if you look at the White House, what was the press secretary saying the other week, Jean-Pierre? As the economy is collapsing, as the world is collapsing, she's talking about, we think we're doing a great job and we're proud because we have more people than ever in the White House that identify as women. We have more trans people on our team. We have more gay people on our team. We have more people of color on our team. Right? It's not about getting the best people into the jobs. It's about getting the right people. So whether it be minorities, gay people, lesbian people, trans people, men who identify as women. It's more important about having them in positions than actually having competent people. And that's not to say that a minority or a gay person or a trans person can't be a competent person, but the focus is on getting these specific people into positions as opposed to getting competent people into these positions. More Facebook layoffs being announced. They're apparently going to start this week. Facebook layoffs are said to match the last round of layoffs, which was, I believe, 11,000 workers. Salesforce is continuing to lay employees off. And we talked about this on Thursday or Friday, but GM, who had previously said no layoffs, is now strongly encouraging employees to take a buyout and essentially quit. The way that they're saying strongly encourage kind of means that if you don't take the buyout, you're going to wind up getting laid off later anyways. Tech layoffs for the year. We don't have a ton of tech layoffs announced in the past 24, 48 hours, but we were hearing reports that a lot of tech companies were planning layoffs for this week to be announced today or early this week, and they couldn't announce their layoffs because they didn't have access to their funds in the bank to pay severance to the employees who were laid off. But tech layoffs for the year are at 481 companies. Total number of employees laid off, 128,202 employees. Let's see. We got one tech layoff to announce, a company by the name of Go to Group. They laid off 600 employees. Microsoft recently laid off an entire team of employees. Barron's had an article over the weekend. Layoffs extend beyond tech. States with the biggest layoffs: California, followed by Washington, followed by New York, followed by Texas, followed by Illinois. In industries with the most layoffs, first is going to be tech. Second, retail. Third, financial. Fourth, healthcare. And 5, services. And even teachers are not safe from the risk of layoffs because of low enrollment at schools. A lot of people are pulling their kids out of public schools and have been since the Mexican beer cough. With low enrollment, even teachers are being laid off. I saw the Home Depot CEO came out over the weekend and was basically telling Americans to wake up. Entrepreneur.com had an article, fake work was exposed, which led to many tech layoffs. Many workers were hired but didn't actually have any work to do. Many people were doing 2 hours of work per day from home. What was happening was companies were hoarding workers. Because it was difficult to hire workers, they just decided we'll hoard as many workers as possible, even if we don't have work for them to do. And companies were also hiring workers that they didn't need, just so that the competition couldn't hire those workers. So Google, Facebook, all these FANG companies are hiring as many people as possible to try to take employees that could potentially work for another company. I thought this was kind of a funny story. The city of Newark, New Jersey fell for a humiliating scam. The mayor signed a sister city agreement with a non-existent Hindu nation called the United Nations of Kailasa. I believe they got scammed out of a bunch of money. That's how stupid government is. That is how stupid the people that are supposed to save the economy and save the banking system are. They can't even do a simple Google search to realize that they're being scammed by a fake nation for a fake sister city. LA Times was going on a tirade over the weekend about how white drivers are polluting the air for people of color. A TikTok whistleblower recently came out and said TikTok data can easily be accessed from China. Day after day after day, we hear about more states banning TikTok, more government agencies banning TikTok. I think it is only a matter of time until TikTok is banned in this country this year. And then lastly, Zero Hedge had an article over the weekend. U.S. cattle prices hit a 9-year high as the national herd drops to a half-century low. And it takes time to build up a cattle herd. When you have less cattle, you have less cattle to breed to make more cattle. So that's kind of scary as well. A lot of stuff that we covered today. I probably only scratched the surface in regards to this SVB story and the bank failures. There could be a huge run on the banks today. I think the markets should crater today. We know that the markets are detached from reality, but if the markets don't crater today, obviously the markets are being manipulated. The Fed is dumping money into the economy. Some people are saying that the Fed is going to pivot. Seeing as how we're seeing kind of cracks in the economy and the banking system. Will be interesting to see if the Fed winds up either slowing down rate hikes, maybe even lowering rates. We have an upcoming Fed meeting. Will we wind up seeing a 50 basis point hike like was kind of being expected? Will it be 25? Will there be no rate hike at all? Again, in terms of this SVB story as well as the overall news, I've kind of only scratched the surface in 23 minutes today. So go ahead and drop a comment. Let me know about any stories, any details that I missed. If you guys enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed to the channel, click that subscribe button down below and ring the bell. That's all I got for you guys today. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you on tomorrow's. We'll probably have a lot more news to report. Thanks for watching. Later, guys.